Well, I think the main message after the whole we're all one and you should treat everybody that way is that you're in control of your own story. You don't have to wait for a coma to remake yourself. You can look at all the things that you don't like about the way things are and change them. Like, just do that. Just change those things.
My guest today is Mitch Apley, who had a near death experience as a result of alcohol related complications. And as this illness progressed, he went into a coma for 37 days and came out a completely changed man. And I am really excited to hear his story. This is the very first time he is sharing it publicly. So, Mitch, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's great to be here. So good to actually get to talk about this.
Well, I really feel blessed. I know that you met my sister at the International Association for Near Death Studies conference this summer, and you were kind enough to agree to come on and share this story, which, from what we've talked about in our pre-interview, is an incredible experience. And I haven't talked to anybody who's been in a coma as long as you were. So why don't you just go ahead and share the story in whatever way it makes sense for you to share it?
Sure. So I guess I'll start with a little bit of the my old life. I was a advertising executive for a advertising agency, and I behaved like one, and I drank a lot, and I drank enough that one day, actually during COVID, when drinking became a little bit easier to do, um, my esophagus sort of exploded one evening, and I had blood pouring out of my mouth, and I really didn't know what was going on. And my wife called 911 and they took me into the emergency room and they were able to suture it up and fix everything within 24 hours. But in the process, my body basically shut down. I had all kinds of infections and went septic and eventually had C. diff and all kinds of problems. So during that initial phase, they had put me out and then they chose to keep me out for a couple of weeks at and they were trying to pull me out after the first few days, but it ended up being 37 days. After 30 days, most people don't really survive. So they were beginning to tell my wife and kids that I wasn't going to come back. And they were obviously very upset about all of that. But actually, like it was January 6th, the day of the insurrection, ironically, like had nothing to do with it. But that's the day that I chose to squeeze somebody's hand that they finally realized that I was going to be coming back. They still didn't know if I was going to be a vegetable or not. Um, I know you're not supposed to say that, but that's how I felt. I felt like a vegetable. Anyway, I, on the other hand, was having kind of an unbelievable experience. Like during this entire horrible drama, which my wife did a great job of keeping notes. And once I read those notes, I was like, oh no, because not that it was all great, but I was in a completely different place. So, as far as I knew, when I woke up, I was in a company pitch meeting. Like my agency was in on site in New Orleans, and we were pitching a client. During the course of the pitch meeting, we found out that I knew the client from somebody who I actually knew in real life from a conference that I'd been to in the past who had some technology that was about volumetric video. And after, a few years, supposedly the technology had progressed. So in my mind, I'm in this conference room talking to a technical wizard who is saying that they're using this new video technology, which is 3D video, and you can even touch it. It's just like the holodeck, actually, if I think about it, it's very similar to the holodeck on Star Trek. But they were using it to create a resort in a satellite space station that was in low Earth orbit all the time. And they wanted my agency to help with the usability of some of the rides and to help with the campaign, the launch campaign to create creative materials for it. So because I already had a relationship with the fellow who was the client, they chose me to go be a part of it. And once I got selected for that, I was so excited. This is all in the Coma still. I, in the Coma, went out and got wasted in New Orleans and was wandering around the streets and came to a tin amusement park where there was these various tin rides. You know those old tin rides that were painted, but they were all like these were rusted out. So there was like a Mae West with a rocket ship, and you could go into it and put a nickel in, and she'd say, "You want to fly the rocket ship or whatever." There was a race car set up that had like a James Dean character, and I could decided to race the car. But in racing that car, I had an accident, hit my head, and that's it knocked me out. So in my dream for the rest of that time, I thought that's what I was in the hospital for. When I came out of the coma, I felt that I had some bed sores on my head, but I was positive it was where I hit my head on that car accident. After the car accident, I woke up and I was transported up to the orb. I was still hungover from the accident. They deposited me on a beach. So the first thing I saw, I was basically put into a shuttle that vibrated the whole world around me away. And when it vibrated away, I was on the beach. It was a gorgeous beach. It was sort of sunsetty. It's a very large circular bay. There was a lounge chair and an umbrella and a small table there for me. And about 20 yards up the beach, there was a beach hut. But otherwise, it was empty. It was pre-launch. The place was empty. Nobody was there yet. And so I didn't expect there to be anybody. And I just assumed they put me out on the beach because it was beautiful. So I fell asleep. Very next morning, I wake up and there's some people on the beach. And I'm going to just tell this story and then I'm going to start skipping ahead because this is taking way too long. All these details. It was 37 days. I've got a ton of this. So I'm just going to. That next morning, my two sons were washed up on the beach. And at the time, they were, teenagers, young teenagers, and they were parched and they were obviously in pain and in danger. And I ran over to them and was trying to figure out what was going on. And they were both very thirsty and they were basically unintelligible. So I decided to run up to the beach house to see if, even though nothing was open, I could get some water or something from them. And I go into this beach house and a big puzzle maze activates. So those stanchions that people have in human barricade movers. A bunch of those appeared, and I couldn't go anywhere. But there was all this beeping, and then a voice said, "You have to play this game." And so I had to play a game of Simon with the lights that were in the room, where the light would blink, and I would have to blink back at the light, and basically like mentally touch each light with my mind in an order, in a cadence, in order to get to where I could get some water for the boys. And it took me forever. I mean, I think it actually took an hour or two. There were 22 steps that I was supposed to get through, and I never did end up getting through them. What I ended up doing was like basically crashing down to my knees and begging for help. And I was like, I can't do this. Can we please put it on easy mode? My kids are dying out there. And somewhere something clicked and it went into easy mode, and I got six lights, and then it let me go get a little Dixie cup of water, and I went out and saved the boys. And then they got up and left, but they weren't even supposed to be there. So it turns out, so the next day, then I meet the client whose name is Jay, and he takes me up to his sort of control center, which is on top of the mountain. So the orb is, imagine like a large oval egg shape, but symmetrical orb. And halfway, like the bottom part of it is mostly water, and the top half of it is air. And there's an island in the middle of it and a mountain in the middle of that island. The basic physical structure is much smaller than what you perceive when you're in there because most of it's a hologram. So, anyway, somehow or another, he took me up to the top of this mountain where there was a beautiful green flat lawn, and his mother was there in a black sackcloth tent. And she wouldn't come out of the tent, but that's where she lived. There was a little tea tray for Jay and I to sit and talk. And he explained to me that the whole point of this virtual place was to give people a place where money is not an object. There's no money to be spent there. The only way that you get things is through effort. And the one way is through doing puzzles. So he's like, that thing that you had yesterday with your boys, that was all a simulation. It's to show you how realistic all this stuff is. And if you had been to the orientation, you would have known that it was coming, but you were so busy getting hammered that you didn't go to the orientation. So anyway, it was very realistic. At that point, we started talking about what I was going to be doing there. Um, I had all these different duties. I'm sorry, do you have any? I needed just a second to take a.
No, no, no. I want you to just keep going because I mean, I've interviewed people before who have had a coma experience, and it's very, very similar to what you're
Is
describing. It's
it?
almost like a series of dreams that are more real than a real dream and super vivid. Sometimes they have dark pieces to it or stressful pieces to it. And then they get to what is the real part of the near death experience. So this is super common from what I've talked to with coma
Okay.
NDEs.
Well, I'm going to zoom out a little bit anyway, because I think I'm being too visual. Essentially, I had a lot of stuff to do for Jay, including the usability testing on the puzzles. And he had different rides. There was a big VR ride that was like one of those 4D rides that you see like at Navy Pier sometimes, where you can go inside and there's a screen and the whole thing moves around. Um, but in this case, it was a virtual reality experience and it could drop you almost anywhere. Like at one point, one of the puzzles I had to figure out, I was in the Rocky Mountains. It dropped me into this little two-story Rocky Mountain Inn, and there was a lady's truck who was it was not starting up, and they needed somebody to go start the truck. And so that was my whole job, was to figure out how to start that truck. And once I figured that out, then shoop, came back to the orb, and I was on to the next thing. But the things got harder and harder. And so at one point I cheated, and because I wasn't able to get through a certain puzzle again. Long story, I won't go into it, but basically I fiddled with the wiring underneath the thing and made it work. And I found out that I could do that a lot, and I was getting encouraged to do that kind of thing from my boss because that was making everything go faster, even though it was kind of messing up everything on the orb at this point. And eventually, a few other things happened, but I fell out of favor, and Jay got mad. His mother was mad, and they sent me into this underground area, and they said my memory would be gone. So on the top of this mountain, all of a sudden the door opens up and I go into this big spiral. Like it looked like one of those driveways for parking garages where it's just down, corkscrew all the way down. Smelled like acid and carbon and oil. And I swear to you, my memory slowly vanished. Like when I got to the bottom of that thing, I had no idea where I was. I had this big handbag full of money that he'd given me as like a parting gift. Had no idea where that came from. I was just in this underground area. You've been to Chicago, there's an underground walkway system, and it was in something like that, except everything was destroyed. The buildings above were apparently destroyed. All of the underground stuff was a mess, and I was just trying to get through. Like I was trudging along, carrying this bag. Eventually, I got rid of the bag because it was too heavy. And after, I mean, I don't know how long it was because I would get stuck in these areas and just be stuck there for so long that I would like actually even urinate while I was sitting there, like pee my pants. I'm sure in real life I was actually probably peeing my pants, but like in the thing, I was just stuck in this subway system. Eventually, I found a group I found a parking lot that had the sort of basement level of a group of women workers. Well, not all the workers, they were all different men and women, but most of them were female. And they were all being oppressed horribly. I could see them from where I was perched in my part of the basement. Not to go into a lot of detail, I helped them out and got them free from whatever tyranny they were experiencing. And then another doorway opened and I was able to corkscrew my way right back up to the top. Phase two, the agency had been fired. I have no idea how much time went by, but my memories all came back. Like as soon as I stepped out on that mountain, everything, I could remember everything from before. And like part of me thinks if I had woken up while I was down there, I wouldn't have remembered anything because I just wasn't in a, I don't know, like a lot of time went by in the dark. And then when I got back up, there was this unbelievable amusement park ride with a bus, and there were pterodactyls attacking it. And there was this great big cave, and the bus would go into the cave. And it was just one gigantic ride after another. I couldn't get through the bus ride over and over again. I kept trying to get it. The pterodactyls would keep attacking the children, or something horrible would happen. You know, that sounds crazy, but the ride was a whole amusement park ride that they had built because they had all this video technology and they were basing it on a movie, but nobody had written the film yet. So they just put all the cool stuff they could into something that they thought might be a movie, and somebody they figured would write the film. And the way to get through the ride was to basically go into this cave where they showed the film, and you were supposed to say the words that unlocked the puzzle. And it was never there. I never knew what it was until I sat down and wrote a new script. And kind of while I was writing the script, it started happening. You're right. It does sound like a series of dreams in a row, doesn't it? Now that I'm saying it out loud. But by that time, I was working really hard to make Jay happy and to do all this stuff. And I really wanted to make this ride work. And after I got through that ride, I eventually got through the ride, but I was spent and I injured myself and I ended up in a hospital. I was starting to get some inklings, though, too, while this was happening, while I was on the bus and preparing all these different things, that I had lost my voice in the real world. Like I had a companion named Gypsum who followed me everywhere. And at one point he was like, "Hey, your voice isn't working anymore. We need to talk about getting you a new voice." And so he had to periodically, like while all this other stuff would come, he would come along and be like, "All right, I've got another voice for you. Listen to this." He'd play it for me. And then eventually I picked one. And it was still a puzzle to find the voice. But that was one of the things that once I got the voice, I had to go back into the hospital to get it put back in. And the hospital I ended up in was out in another spacecraft that wasn't the orb. And it was just way out there. And my room had one wall that was facing out over, it looked a lot like what's behind you, actually. It was just space, lights here and there. And I felt like I was okay. So I started wandering around the space station, and like literally everywhere I looked, there were people doing unbelievably fun things. There were people like flying around outside. There were all these different spaceships doing stuff. Like people were living out in space all over this place. And eventually, some woman came up to me and was like, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Well, I don't know if I'm okay or not. Do you know what year it is?" Like when I came in here, it was 2020, maybe 2021. I'm not really sure if it's still those years or if it's 2022 now or what's going on. And she's like, "Oh, it's 2165. You, it's not those years anymore. You're way off." I'm like, "Well, I don't think I know anybody who's still alive now." She's like, "Well, probably not, but it's fine here." She goes, "You're gonna have to decide." And then she kind of like wandered off. It wasn't like she was an angel. It didn't feel like that at all. She was just like a person walking down the hall. And then I went back into my little room and I sat there for a while and thought about all the different things. And I realized that I haven't spent enough time with my wife and my kids. And so I decided I should come back. And I wasn't sure how to do that. But eventually they said they were going to transport me to Milan. So I went to sleep. And when I woke up, is actually when I woke up in real life. I was on the bus or on the ambulance to go from the ECU to the therapy place. I was being transferred to long-term care. So that was kind of a crazy thing. And then like afterwards, the drugs were in my brain and I was seeing slugs and all kinds of weird stuff. This all doesn't sound terribly profound, but to me, like there were such profound moments in there. One of the main characters that I met early on, right out of the beach, was this woman named Jis. She was a mermaid, and she represented pure and unbelievable love, like pure, I guess, source love. I don't know. It wasn't a sexual thing at all. Like she had kids, she had a husband. I met all of them. But like the feeling that I had with her, this sort of unity of souls, was so comforting and so pure and joyful that like that's what I want to bring back into this world. Like if anybody can feel that feeling for a second and know that that's possible, then it's going to make them think twice about being a jerk, I would think. I don't know. Maybe that's super idealistic and whatever, but so that's kind of where I'm at. I don't know if that makes sense or not. Um,
Well, all of these things are all unique experiences. I find that NDEs are as unique as the person having them. We all come with our own background and our own perceptions. What's interesting, I guess one of the things I want to ask you is, were you able to find out, since your wife took elaborate notes of what was going on with you while you were in the coma, and then you're having these experiences, and obviously you don't have a calendar, you don't know that it's 37 days, but you did have really interesting experiences. So for example, when you were doing the puzzle the first time, and you were supposed to get through 22 levels and there are flashing lights, do you have any idea, like that was earlier in your
that was right.
37
Yeah,
days, were there lights that were potentially going off, monitors that were going off, your body was shutting down, people were rushing in a code situation that could have leaked into your subconsciousness and turned that into the experience that you were having as that Simon number situation, or light situation rather.
it could have been. I mean, obviously there were a lot of lights and stuff going on. Don't forget it was also like year two of COVID. Like it was everything was flashing lights and nobody could see you. Like actually when I had people come, I couldn't tell who they were because they were all in like it was like an Ebola camp, you
Mm-hmm.
know. I did also, I forgot to mention this, but at one point, one of the puzzles I was in Ireland and there were these four beautiful Irish wolfhounds with unicorn horns. And they looked so real and so regular, but they would run up and they would poke me right in the thigh. And so I was pretty sure that's when I was getting injections or something. I have no idea if that's actual or not, but those were very cute dogs. But I don't know if you've seen an Irish wolfhound. They're like 4 foot at the shoulder, and four of them coming at you with unicorn horns is kind of intimidating.
I'm sure it would be. So I'm also curious, these, they do, for people that are listening, they're obviously going to sound like dreams, like almost the way that our dreams are nonsensical. We've all probably experienced dreams that didn't make sense. They were futuristic, they were past kind of what you were experiencing, like the tin rides, they were from the past, the future being on these pods, etc. But how did you feel that the experiences that you were having in the coma were different than dreams, or were they the same as dreams?
Well, they were very different in the sense that they were extremely heightened, but also
Okay.
like
So
I
give me
would
an idea of like what you mean by extremely heightened.
sure. Um, right now, I can tell you pretty precisely what this mermaid's underwater home looked like. It was a bunch of plastic sheets that hung from coral. There's the underside of coral. There was a light blue glow on either side of it. Like I could paint this picture for you right now. And it's been 5 years. I don't have stuff that I did in my real life I can remember from this morning that I could do the same thing with. Um, the feeling of profundity, I mean, hell, I don't know if that's real or not, but that it all felt like one connected experience to me, even though there were all kinds of surreal things. The only time where I felt like something surreal was happening is when I was on the shuttle going through space and I saw something floating through the air. I thought we were just in regular gravity. And so I was like, it's flying. And the guy's like, yeah, we're in space. It's there's no gravity. It's fine. Um, the dreams that I had afterwards of like the snakes on the ceiling and stuff feel markedly different from what was happening just like the day before. Those are fuzzy, they feel like normal dreams, but all of this stuff is etched in there hard. The details, the smells, the embarrassment that I felt like I was constantly like horrified and mortified about various different things. So if you ask, like when I talk about it now and when I say it out loud, this is the first time I've really done that. And it reminds me of when I would listen to my kids tell me about their dreams, and about three stories in, I'm like, all right, you're making it up now. This is ridiculous. So I'm sorry about that. But like all of
No, I
this
don't think you should
stuff
apologize about it at all.
was to me, like I would go to bed, I would wake up, I'd be in the same place. And I would look around and see stuff that I had left there before and pick it up and move it around. Like those things don't happen in my normal dreams. The continuity of it is pretty remarkable too, because like everything looked the same. In my dreams, if I look at a sign and I look back at the sign, the words are gone. In this place, the things that were in a place, they were fixed, they were permanent. I was walking into these structured environments repeatedly. So that makes it feel a little different. But I've never had a multiple day dream before, so maybe that's just how it works.
I don't know. I think that you went into just my opinion from watching, listening to, reading so many of these over time, is that we don't really understand what consciousness is. All we know is that the brain is a receiver and it's picking up and it's adding this consciousness in so that we can feel these things in the body. And when we go to this state and we have something that feels ultra real, that you can recall 5 years later, that has a smell to it, that has vividness, sounds, interactions. To me, that's a different experience of consciousness. Would I call it a near-death experience? It doesn't have a lot of the components of what I would call a near-death experience, but I think that you had an extraordinary consciousness experience. And I'll tell you why this is different, and it makes me believe that this was not a dream for you. People do not go to sleep and have a dream and come back and change everything about their life from what it was before. That doesn't happen. But when somebody has an experience about what you're talking to, and I've talked to enough of you now with a coma like, coma experience as driven by a coma, they come back completely changed. And like you, and like the people who have near death experiences, have this massively detailed recall that we don't get in this normal life. To your point, even if I think back at something that was really emotionally important to me, like the birth of my child, I can't recall in every detail what a room looked like or anything like that. I can recall maybe how I feel or certain moments of it, but you have a recall of every moment of everywhere your consciousness was focused. You have a recall. So this is a conscious, I want to call this a consciousness experience. And I want to hear how it changed you when you came back.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's the more dramatic part, I guess. I was raised Protestant, pretty laid back kind of a church in the middle of Nebraska, small town. Like the potluck on Wednesday was kind of more important than Sunday anyway. So religion's been important. Like in that church, I felt presence. Like when I was a kid, I would sit there and feel something and feel love coming out of the stained glass windows, if nothing else. It was this beautiful church. But I never really got into all that stuff. And, you get into advertising, you get into movies, and you get into all kinds of stuff. And I was on this, I want to be a filmmaker. And then when that didn't work, I was going to be the best advertising guy in the Midwest. And I did pretty darn well. I live in a nice house in a nice part of town and all that stuff. But then this happened. And after about like I came back 6 months after I was out, which is too soon. I wasn't ready to come back to work. They let me go about 6 months after that, and they gave me a year of severance. So I have no hard feelings. Like they took care of me as best they could. But there was no way I was going to be able to continue to work there. Like the artifice of it all was driving me insane. Like all of the BS that people were spouting, like it was normal and like it mattered, was suddenly like too much for me. And I said too many little things to the wrong people. And the next thing another 50-year-olds out on the street. And I tried to start up some other things, and it's none of it's really working because I just can't be an advertising guy anymore. It's just not my thing. So I had my whole identity melt away. Uh, my sense of self was gone. I mean, that year that I was basically sitting on the couch, I was a puddle. And essentially, since that coma, I've been speed running life 2.0 because when I came out, I couldn't eat, I couldn't talk, I couldn't use the restroom. I had to learn all that stuff. Now I feel like I'm about 18 in psychological years because I just like a year ago I was so horribly depressed and I couldn't figure out why I couldn't talk to people. I hadn't really learned how to say no to anybody. My whole life I'd never really learned how to say no. But I didn't know that. I I would just tell girls that I was like gay or something instead of break up with them. I wouldn't confront anybody for that type of stuff. Now all of a sudden I'm like, well, no, like I don't want to do a thing. And I would blow up like I blew up at people. And I don't know. It's been a really topsy-turvy thing. But where I went to for solace started out with Spinoza. I realized that it's all one thing and it's all God. Whatever it is, whatever God is for everybody, like we're all made of the same. That is incontrovertible. And that was the truth that caused me to start going and searching for other things. And Spinoza was the first one, I think, that kind of had that articulated that way. Einstein liked Spinoza, so that made me start looking at quantum physics and that whole thing. And so for the last 4 years, I've been on that. And I got to tell you, space news is really amazing now. Like when I was a kid, you didn't have space news at all. And now it's every day there's a new galaxy and the universe is different. And I feel like the universe is trying to figure itself out and it's doing a real bang up job of it on the physical side of things. But I'm like, we need to figure out the people part of this because we're not doing it right at the moment. And we could be. So what can I do? I can tell stories and I can help people tell stories better. And I can examine stories and try to figure out if there's a way to look at the output of the globe, if we can stand back away from our own output and have a spiritual take on our own. I've heard people say, I talked to a guy today from Kenya who said when we went into space, we started seeing things that only God had seen before. And when we go into these places, I feel like I've seen some things that only God has seen about me before. I don't know if it's true for anybody else. I can't say that for sure. I'm pretty sure it is just about me, but it's different and it's important. And I feel like he's trying to, or he, she, it, they, is trying to bring people together. Like the second thing I did was I found Annalou Smitsman, who's a PhD doctor who's putting together this Earthwise game. She's a shaman out of Norway. Unbelievable woman. Just crazy spiritual person. Helped me get my head around some of the issues that I was dealing with because I really didn't understand what consciousness even was. at the beginning of all this. It was like sitting in the dark with first principles, and I don't know. I didn't even know what was wrong. I still don't think I know what was wrong. So anyway, this has been great to talk it through. I feel like I should send you $200 and
That's
see if you're
funny.
on my insurance.
I do have a couple of questions that I think I'm intrigued by. So when you first went into the coma, the man that you were working for, you were going to solve all these puzzles with, he said to you, there's no money when you went up to that pod place. There
Yeah.
wasn't money, didn't exist. Yet towards the end, when you were running around and you went into that dark downward spiral place, you were carrying a bag of money and you
So
said that that money was too heavy and eventually you let it go. And I have a feeling that that meant something.
yeah, definitely. Probably. I
Probably,
don't know.
definitely.
I don't know. It sounds like it should, for sure. Uh, I mean, yeah, it was too heavy. It was not easy to carry around. I think that he had given it to me as like a, okay, see ya, here you go, parting gift kind of a thing. Like if money's
But
all
yet
you
it
want.
didn't have value because it was still weighing you down.
Oh yeah,
Let it
we're in a
go.
post-apocalyptic world. There's nobody to buy stuff from anyway. So it's just heavy. And letting it go felt good. Like that was probably, I mean, it wasn't too long after that that I ran into those folks who needed the help. And then, yeah, that turned it around, I guess.
So the people in your life, have they noticed big changes in you since this all happened?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of amazed I'm still married. My wife is unbelievably cool about all of this stuff. But she's noticed a change. She's super supportive. I mean, she's honestly, I wouldn't be anywhere without her. I'm so lucky to have her this whole time. But yeah, she's noticed. Um,
What about your kids?
yeah, I mean, this is horrible, but like I was playing catch with my son this past weekend. He was back from college and he's like, man, you throw the ball a lot better than when you were drinking all the time. I'm like, yeah, I do, don't I?
And so you came back from this and you went in an alcoholic, but you came out of this and now you're not?
No, I never, I stopped. I had to turn myself into the kind of person who doesn't. And so I just decided not to. I mean, I was helped. I use Smart Recovery. The great program still is, and now I lead that group occasionally because we definitely help people. But
That's
yeah,
wonderful.
the alcohol thing is brutal. I don't
I'm
know how
sure it
people do it,
is.
but it's fine. Like now, it's been 4 years, and I'm healthier than I've ever been. I sleep better than I ever have. Like my kids will not drink excessively. Like I've told them it's fine. Like you can drink whatever. You're in college, but I know that they're going to be responsible about it. They both
That's a good
lived
thing.
through a brutal time. And
Yeah, I'm sure they have. So one last question about the NDE part of it. So when you have this experience and you go through everything that you've gone through and you come back completely changed, what do you really think was the most important reason that you had that experience? Or do you think that it's even possible that you were experiencing either a different dimension or a different lifetime that doesn't exist right now? Like right now, you're in, you were in 2020, 2021. Were you maybe really in a future version of yourself experiencing that consciousness?
I think so. I think that that area was so tactile. It was just as tactile and real as everything else. And I had a very distinct sensation that if I wanted to, I could just hang out and get a job and just stay there. Although nobody seemed to have jobs. But Yeah, I mean, I think that I was probably seeing some stuff. And like again, when this all started it was 2020. Bezos wasn't up in space yet. I mean, he was talking about it, but like a lot of this stuff hadn't been happening. Now, Bezos is talking about putting supercomputer clusters orbiting the Earth and having people work out there all the time. And so, like, the idea of an orbiting hospital makes perfect sense if you're going to have people working up there. And this is only 2 years, 3 years, 4 years later. So I don't know what to believe anymore, but I certainly am a lot more open-minded about it all.
So, from what you've learned and what you've experienced, what would be the final message that you would have for everybody?
And I know it's horrible, and like even saying that sometimes change is horrible and all that. But have you ever heard of the story of the empty boat?
I don't think so.
There's this old Buddhist short story. It's actually called The Two Boats, and it's about a fellow who's a fisherman and he's working away in his little boat, and there's a big boat that's just over there. And it's coming his way, and he's a little nervous about it, but he's just doing his thing. He's fishing. And he looks over, and the big boat's even closer. And he goes, "Hey, I'm over here!" And then he keeps fishing. And little by little, the big boat gets closer and closer, and he starts screaming at the big boat. Then he gets really angry at the big boat. He's like, "I am over here, you idiot! You're gonna capsize my boat!" And he like pushes himself away just as the big boat comes and barely survives. And he's like, "I'm coming to kick your ass!" And he runs up, and there's nobody in the big boat. It's just an empty boat. So who's he mad at? And why
Mm.
is he mad? And if you think about it, we've all got so many empty boats floating around that we're all good and mad at all the time for no reason. Like if you just take a minute and think about the fact that the boats are empty, then it's easier to stand back and remember that it's okay to be nice to people, you know. I don't know. I'm going off on a far long thing. All I'm saying is you can rewrite your own story, and you
Well, I
should.
think that that's a super valuable message for people to hear. And so I want to thank you for
Of
being
course.
brave enough to come on and share your story. I know it takes a lot to put yourself out there, to be vulnerable enough to share something publicly. And I think your message is beautiful. And I want to congratulate you on what you are doing, on the work that you've done, and how you've been able to rewrite your story. I think it's such a beautiful example, and who knows who it wakes up. So thank you for your part and what you're doing to help wake up the collective, because we all know it is so needed right now.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been wonderful.
Oh, I'm so glad you thought so. And of course, this show is nothing without all of you who tune in to watch, listen, comment, and share these amazing experiences. So thank you everybody for watching. There's a reason you found this video. These stories awaken something ancient inside us. Hit subscribe and stay on the path with us.